Hello, Gavin here, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be looking at how to record bass. So recently I was asked to record bass for Marcus Deluxe as part of one of his pedal demos he was putting together. Of course I jumped at the opportunity. It's great working with Marcus, he's really got some great ideas for the tracks and does give you a lot of free rein to try things if you're playing bass for him. So it's really fun working on this project with him. There's a couple of other tracks we've worked on as well and altogether been awesome. But I thought this would be a really good track to show you how you record bass. You see, you don't need a fancy setup to record bass at home. In fact, you need very little to do it. So today I'm going to talk you through the process, what you need to know when recording, and I'll be answering questions left by some of you over on my Instagram, all about recording bass as well. So let's get stuck into that now. First off, what do you actually need to record bass at home? Well, you actually don't need that much, you just need an audio interface. Now, an audio interface is really just a box that allows you to plug your bass guitar into your computer. It does the analog to digital and digital to analog conversions that allow you to plug it in and record your bass on whatever piece of software you choose to use. For me, my DAW or digital audio workstation of choice is Ableton Live. And that's really just because it lends itself to electronic music production really well. Automatically maps to my MIDI controllers and really just is really simple to use in that genre. But there's lots of great DAWs out there. Things like Logic, or even if you've got a Mac, it comes standard with GarageBand, that works really well. So really, whatever you choose to use, it's a case of just learning how to use it properly. But there's a lot of options for audio interfaces, even just with the inputs on the interface, whether it's 1 input, 2, 4, 8, there's so many options. So really it comes down to what you need. For me, I have 4 inputs. I use the Audient Evo 8, which is a really nice interface. And actually one of the things I really like about it is another important factor. It's really low noise. You see, instruments and microphones like the one above my head will always have some element of noise to them. So you don't want the preamps in your interface to add extra noise on top of that. You want to keep the noise to as low a level as possible. Other things that are very useful for recording bass though are a DI box. Now whether you choose to go with a nice affordable DI like the Behringer Ultra DI 21, no, DI 20 even, that's a really nice DI, it's pretty affordable, it's nothing fancy, it's just a nice simple active DI box that allows you to plug your bass into one of the inputs and allows you to feed the XLR into the interface. And that's a really good option. The other option you have though is something like this. Now this is a preamp pedal. In fact, I've got a video all about these that I'll link down in the description, and these are actually a really good tool to have for recording at home. Now this does the same job as the DI box, but it adds in a bass preamp. Now the preamp is emulating the sound you would get from the preamp section of your amplifier. So like the combo amp I've got behind me. Now I don't use that amplifier in my studio for noise reasons, I need to keep the volume quite low. So this allows me to plug in direct and get a really nice bass tone direct into my computer. Now you could just plug the instrument directly into a 1/4 inch input on the interface. And I've done that for guide tracks before, it does work. But a DI box will convert that unbalanced signal from your bass guitar to a balanced signal, which reduces, particularly over long cable runs, any noise or hum that you might get in your signal. Of course, for listening back you do have options. I personally use a nice set of headphones for while I'm recording, but you could of course use speakers as well, nice studio monitors. But if you're limited for your volume like I am, using headphones can work really well. You can get some great results with that. So I use these headphones for rough mixing. I do check my mixes on speakers as well because it is important to know that it works on everything. We'll come back to that in a little bit though. But for recording I could use those, or I could just use my in-ear monitors that I use in a lot of my videos actually. So what is the best way to record your bass guitar? Well, there's actually quite a few options for this. Some people, like myself, do like to set up pedal boards with nice effects pedals and record the sound that we create with those into the interface. And that's great, but it's often a really good idea to also record your clean sound. The reason for this is you might find that what you recorded with all those effects and your nice amplifiers isn't quite sitting right in the mix once you hear it in the song. And it's good with that to be able to reamp that original sound back through something, whether it be a pedal or an amplifier, and just set up a really nice sound that suits the song and put that in your song. So what is reamping? Well, a reamp box allows you to take that balanced signal that you recorded into the computer through your DI box and converts it back into a signal similar to the bass itself. So you play the recording you already have of the nice clean signal from the interface through the reamp box, and that allows your pedals to see the signal like it's your bass guitar and react like it was just you playing the bass guitar through it. So it's a really cool box to have in your studio. Now with that, you could record just clean then. You could record a nice clean signal in and then reamp into whatever you want, or use plugins. For me, I go a different route. I tend to split my signal, so I use one of these. This is a radial big shot which allows me to split my signal properly though. You see, you do get A/B switchers that allow you to split the signal, but they don't allow you to control ground loops or polarity issues. Now if I split my bass signal without using this, just a standard passive switcher, I could end up with ground loops, which comes across on your signal as this really horrible buzz, so you really don't want that. The other thing that could happen is that the two signals become out of phase with each other. That in itself can make the sound really thin and really just isn't pleasing, so you don't want to create any major phase issues. A box like this allows you to lift the ground on one of the sides. Again, you don't want to go removing grounds from amplifiers or things like that, because that is a very dangerous route to go. So this safely allows you to remove the ground from one side. And then we have this polarity switch, which if there was that phase issue, you flick that switch and it flips the phase on one of them, bringing them both back into alignment. So once I've split the signal, I can then use half of my rig through the pedals to get the sound that I have in my head, and then I can use the other half totally clean straight into my interface through a DI box, and that allows me to have a good clean sound as a backup plan. For a recording like I'm doing just now, that's really important, because Marcus has given me an idea of what he wants for the song, and he sent me a track without the bass in it for me to record along to. But I might have 2 or 3 ideas, and that's fine. What it means is I can record all my ideas on separate tracks and then send him them individually. For instance, on the couple of songs that I recorded for Marcus in this session, I used a clean DI, which was taken from my Mark bass amplifier, just totally clean. Then I also had the DI from this preamp, but this had the Mr. Sparkle drive in front of it, so this one was slightly distorted. So I was able to give him both of those and he could pick and choose what he wanted to use. It also meant that if he didn't like the distortion that I used, but wanted a different type of drive, he could reamp the clean DI and make whatever sound he wanted. Now to get a little bit into how it's sent, Marcus sent me a WAV file of the track without the bass, and that's what I recorded along to. Then I sent him just my bass track with his tracks muted, so he could insert that into his mix. This was probably the best way for us to do it, because it was just nice and easy. We send one track back and forward. Although I actually sent him for one of the tracks, I think 6 different bass tracks, depending on the technique used and having a clean and a distorted DI for him to work with. So now what we're going to do is look at a small clip of the track. At the end you'll hear the full thing, but for just now we're going to look at a small section of it. The reason for this is so you can see how simple a bass tone I sent to him. You see, I didn't do any crazy EQing. As I said, there was a bit of overdrive on it, but it was still a pretty flat EQ curve for what I sent him. I didn't do anything too crazy. Now the reason for that is it allows him to shape it at his end. Even though it was distorted, it was still just a distorted DI. So he could reshape that into anything he wanted to do with it. Part of the way through, the backing track of what he sent me is going to disappear and you'll just hear the isolated bass tone. So let's have a listen to that now. Next up, we're going to answer some of the questions that were sent in by you on my Instagram account. So some of them were answered within this topic, so we're going to look at the ones I still have left. And the first of those is, do you need to have the egg boxes or sound insulation on your walls for your studio? And that's actually a really good question, because if you're recording amplifiers or vocals or anything of that nature, yes, you should really have some sound insulation. I'm definitely no expert when it comes to putting together studios properly like that, but you do need some things to stop reflections, particularly if you're mixing. But for the way I work just now, with everything being DI'd, literally the only mic in my studio is the one above my head for me speaking, and most of my work, other than checking mixes, is done on headphones, so I don't have too much of that going on, but I do have things in the room that do stop reflections. So yes, it is a good idea to have it if you're going to be recording with microphones or mixing on speakers, but if you're working mainly on headphones and you're DIing everything, it's really not as crucial. The next one is, how do you keep track of the good bits when recording and maybe hours of recording? Now this actually isn't too much of a problem for me, because I tend to work in a single track format. So what I'm doing is I'm doing layers of the same track. So if I'm doing different variations of the bass line, I'll record one, and if I like it, that gets muted, I start a new track, and I do the next one below it. And I make sure to name them all so that they have a relevant title. So for instance, for the first song me and Marcus worked on, I had one labelled Clean DI Pick when I used a plectrum, and I had one Clean DI Fingers when I used my fingers, and then I had Driven DI Pick, Driven DI Pick and Driven DI Fingers, and then I could isolate each one of them independently for when I was sending them in the files. And the next one's really important actually. What are the challenges with capturing bass when it's not reproduced well by cheap sound systems? That's actually something you really have to think about. Now, when I'm mixing my own music, I check my mix on many types of sound system. Headphones, earphones, check it out on a normal sound system. Really, you've got to just check it on various devices to make sure it works. Listening to it on your phone. But really, for any music you're mixing, you just have to check it on as many platforms as possible and get a mix that works on as much as you can. For bass, if I'm sending it to someone else, this is another case for sending as clean a DI as you can, with as little processing done as possible, so they can shape it to suit their mix. And lastly, do some pedals not record well when they get digitized? Really, if you have a good audio interface, it gives you a really good reproduction of what you plug into it. So if the pedal sounds good on your headphones when you're playing through it, it should sound good once put into the software. Now this also could be an issue with things like fuzz pedals and overdrives, where they sometimes don't sound as good when recorded direct, because you don't have the speaker. The speaker is an integral part of those tones. So really, if you find that the direct sound isn't working, using something like a cabinet simulator, impulse responses, those types of things, they'll make sure that you get as close to the amp-like tone in the software as you can. But really, as long as you're not sending too much gain, you're not overloading the interface, it should reproduce what you put in really well. So thank you for all those questions that were left on the video. If you have any other questions though, please do leave them down in the comments section, because I'd love to speak to you all about this topic down there as well. So before I sign off, I just want to say thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope this helps you with recording bass at home. Like I say, if you've got any other questions about this topic though, please leave them down in the comments below, because I'd love to hear what you all think about it. And again, much of this is my own opinion or things I've learnt from other bass players. So I'd love to know any other tips or tricks that you might have. Please leave them down in the comments, because I'd love to read those. So before we sign off and I play you the full track at the end of this video, just want to say thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, please hit like and subscribe down below, clicking the bell icon to be notified of more content when it comes out. And until next time, keep working on those bass faces.